All right, good afternoon, everyone. I think we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, I count as one. That's 8. That is quorum. 9. There we go. Thank you, Tom. Looks like we have everyone together. All righty. Good afternoon, everyone. So we'll start off by recognizing that we're conducting our business today on the territories of the Hoopadgesit and the Tshot First Nations, and to recognize, affirm, and appreciate that fact. With that in mind, we are conducting our business in a hybrid format today. So while the folks here in the ACRD offices are conducting our business on Hoopadgesit Tshot territory, those of us who are online may be coming from different spots. Feel free to identify them, but you don't have to. We're mostly in Nuu-chah-nulth territory, sometimes in Coast Salish. And with that in mind, we'll go around the table and introduce ourselves inside the room here at the boardroom and then online. And then from there, I think the only thing to mention is that we're live streaming our business today on YouTube through the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District channel, but also that is embedded on the ACRD website. You can attend the meeting through Zoom as well, but you have to pre-register. So I don't think you can do that the day of. You have to do it the day before, or maybe even the week before. With that in mind, we also have an email address that you can send your messages and questions into, and that's responses@acrd.bc.ca. And then from there, at the end of the day, at the question period format, we'll be able to read them out if at all possible. We do check the attendee chat as well. So if you've if you've connected in through Zoom, that would be a way to do it using the Q&A function. However, we don't monitor the chat on the YouTube embed nor on YouTube itself, because that would be too much work. So with that in mind, I'd like to welcome everyone here, and we'll go around the table identifying ourselves and go from there. Heather, do you want to start?
Good afternoon, everyone. Heather Zenner, Manager of Administrative Services.
Good afternoon, Cindy Solda, alternate for Deb Haggard, City of Port Alberni.
Good afternoon, Aklama Penny-Cote. I'm the Electoral Area Director for Sprout Lake.
Good afternoon, I'm Mike Sparrow, Electoral Area for Cherry Creek.
Good afternoon, Kel Roberts, Alternate Director for Area C.
Good afternoon, Cynthia Dick, General Manager of Administrative Services and Acting CAO.
Good afternoon, Mike Hurd, General Manager of Planning and Development.
Good afternoon, Terry Fong, Chief Financial Officer.
And good afternoon, Jenny Brunn, General Manager of Community Services.
Alrighty, and we'll head online. Bob, do you want to start?
Yes, good afternoon, Bob Beckett, representing Area A, Bamfield.
Thank you. Susan?
Thank you. Good afternoon, Susan Roth for Beaver Creek. Thank you.
Ready, and Fred?
Fred Boyko, Electoral Area Director for Beaufort.
Thank you. And Tom?
Good afternoon, Tom Steer, appointed Director of the District of Tofino, coming to you from the unceded territory of the Tloquet First Nation.
Great. Shari?
Shari Minions, Mayor for the City of Port Alberni.
Thank you. Mariah?
Good afternoon, everyone. Aklama Mariah Coots here for the Hotchockosit Tribe Government. Happy to be here. And I will give my apologies. I need to jump very quickly just before 2 o'clock this afternoon for a quick legislative meeting, and then I will return. Kleko, Chu.
All right. Thank you very much for letting us know. Marilyn?
Good afternoon, Marilyn McEwen, Mayor of Ucluelet, and I just want to say everybody is sounding very chipper today.
I think we're getting over the time change. I think that's what it is. And lastly, Levana, please go ahead.
Good afternoon, Levana Mastrangelo from Ucluelet First Nation. Thank you.
Great. Okay, and Oklahoma Sayachat, my name is John Jack. My traditional name is Sayachat. I'm the Chief Counselor for the Wait First Nations and the Chairperson for the Regional District. Alrighty, well, let's kick off here. We have an approval of the agenda. I don't think we have any new materials, although we do have a notice of motion. Is that what that is? Or it's a...
No, that was a potential amendment from Director Sparrow on the budget item.
Okay.
But we do have one item to remove, and that's 9.1A, a temporary use permit for 24009.
Yes, so that would be the other change to the agenda, is removing 9.1A from the agenda. Are there any other items to add or subtract? I do have one myself, but we'll go to Director Cote first.
Thank you. I'd like to ask the board to invite Ministry of Transportation to come to be a delegation in the near future for an update on what's happening with Cathedral Grove area and their plans for the highway changes that they're planning to do for River Road area. Thank
Okay,
you.
let's do that right after this then. You want to, Director Solda?
Just a quick question on the transportation, the ministry, isn't there a meeting on the 16th of April for the transportation committee? Just so you know, an update could be there too.
Yeah, I think Director Cote was hoping for either a committee of the whole or a delegation for the board. Yeah. Okay, so we'll just make sure that we pass that. Alrighty, any further items? I do have one. I'm wondering if Director Beckett would be willing to give an update on his trip to Ukraine as a part of member updates or the reports under, I can't remember the reference, 10.3G.
I'd be happy to, sir.
That'd be great. Thank you very much. Any further items? Is anyone willing to move the agenda as amended? Thank you, Director Solda, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you very much. Does anyone have any declarations? So conflicts of interest, apparent conflicts of interest, gifts exceeding $250 of value, or time constraints, that would be a thing too. So Director Coots has already stated that she's gonna have to jump out at 2 and may or may not be back. We'll see. Anybody else? Director Roth, please go ahead.
If it's not over by 4:30, I need to leave then, please.
Okay, thank
Thanks.
you. I'll write that down. 4:30. Okay, any further comments or questions? I don't think we have any declarations, so I think we're all good. That brings us to item 4, the adoption of minutes. Item A is the Board of Directors meeting minutes for March 12th, 2025. Thank you, Director Solda, for moving. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Any further comments or questions? Errors, omissions, deletions, that sort of thing? I was not here for that, so I cannot say. Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item B, which is the Salmon Beach Committee meeting dated March 13th, 2025. Director Roberts, please go ahead. Oh, I'm moved by Director Roberts. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Changes at all? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Alrighty, that brings us to the last item in minutes, which is the Committee of the Whole meeting minutes for March 19th, 2025. And do we have a mover? Thank you, Director Sparrow, seconded by Director Solda. Thank you. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Come on, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, so that brings us to item 5, which is petitions, delegations, and presentations. So we have one item on presentations. I would remind the former director from Beaufort, which she already knows, that we usually have a 10-minute limit. But if it looks like you're close to the end of the presentation, then you'll get a minute or two. But if I interrupt you, I'm just asking the rest of the board to see if they'll let you continue. And the answer is almost invariably yes. So thank you and welcome, Ms. Shannon, Mrs. Shannon. Please take it away. Do you have a presentation or are you just reading anything out? Yeah, just make sure to use the mic. Yeah. Right.
Sorry, thank you. Just what I submitted as part of your agenda package today for the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, thank you for having me as a delegation here today. For those that don't know me, my name is Tanya Shannon. I'm the former director for Beaufort. I manage the agritourism on Shannon Farms out the end of Beaver Creek Dairy Farm is the primary operations. We're members of the Alberni Farmers Institute, and I sit on the Agriculture Development Committee for the Regional District. I've been on this committee since 2019 and got roped into being vice chair this year. So in your agenda package, you would have seen my presentation that I submitted. I hope you've had a read of it. I don't today want to regurgitate what I've submitted in writing. It talks about ALC restrictions for agritourism accommodation, the new bylaws, which you would have had a presentation about from staff at your last board meeting, from the provincial short-term rental regulations, and just our current zoning bylaws, and their implications on agriculture, agritourism, and accommodation. So I'm hoping today more to have as part of this presentation, and maybe that just has me ending quickly, but more of a dialogue from the board, because I've been sitting on this committee for 6 years now. And if I back up a little bit, recommendations have come forward when the proposed zoning bylaw was coming through to the board. And this was years prior to 2022 of public engagement, volunteers, producers, staff getting together and pinpointing issues in our bylaws that were impeding local agriculture, diversification opportunities in the ACRD. And so this committee has put a lot of time in. And when I say the committee, I am the vice chair, but I want to articulate that I'm coming from me as like myself on this committee, not necessarily everybody as a whole. But me personally, there has been a lot of recommendations that were put forward in the proposed zoning bylaw for agriculture. There's some things at the regional level here that we are more restrictive than agriculture land committee regulations, and bylaws that are just simply outdated with current economics, changes in what residents want to see when it comes to education, where their food's coming from. You're seeing a shift in wanting to support the local agriculture. And not just that, but also with like economics globally. We've got tariff things happening. And I mean, COVID really brought forward a lot of issues that we have with like local food production and sustainability. And I mean, on top of working through all these things through a pandemic, we were followed by a wildfire, and that further showed where weaknesses are in supply chains. So I'm here today to kind of ask, or if there can be dialogue with the board, because sitting on this committee, when the zoning bylaw was going to come to the board, the decision was made to defer this and do the OCPs. And this was a minimum 36-month process. And while I understand like a whole zoning bylaw is like a big pie, it's a big piece. There was a lot of things in there that would have been really beneficial for local agriculture. And when the ADC, the Agriculture Development Committee, learned that the zoning bylaw wasn't passed, and fair enough, the recommendation then came forward to say, well, if you can't do the whole zoning bylaw, can we look at just pushing through the agriculture parts? Because there's a lot of things in there that there is current producers and potential producers. These are the issues, and these are what we need fixed at the regional district level. So this January, that ask from the ADC was denied by the board. So today, and I have sent, I sent an email just basically expressing my frustrations with how long things are taking, because every time something's deferred, or it's not in the budget, or we're not going to make a decision, we're just going to take this as a report, you're saying yes to keeping the challenges in place. And I'm hoping today that if the board has some other suggestions or anything to kind of come up with, because I mean, you go through the process of sitting on a committee and putting all the time in, and you're going through the proper channels, and it just feels like agriculture and the ACRD is just being sidestepped. And I'm looking for guidance from the board of how we can move things forward. There is a request for decision today in front of you regarding agritourism accommodation. And in my presentation, I had a different ask. The request for decision today is regarding the staff's recommendation was to amend a different type of bylaw. I can't find it. I'm sorry. Thank you, thank you. So I had asked to amend agriculture zones, amend the bylaw for the agriculture zones to allow agritourism and tourism accommodation as a diversification option. And and the committee has kind of resorted to like, if we can't pass a whole pie, as in the zoning bylaw update, and we can't pass a piece of a pie, call it the agriculture zone, maybe we can take a bite out of the pie and move some things forward immediately. And that's my ask today, to have a serious conversation about that, or if the board has any other ideas. Because it just feels like we keep hitting walls, and while we can say we're doing the zoning bylaw updates, and when we get there, we'll get to the zoning bylaw, but there's lots of things that, I mean, we've been waiting for years. What can we do immediately to help local agriculture? So, I mean, that's the gist of what I have. I don't want to go in the specifics of ALC regulations or the new BC short-term rental regulations pertaining to agritourism accommodation, or even what the bylaws are here, because you've had presentations, it's in reports. So I would rather try bring more of a human element to what I'm asking for, and just reminding everybody here that it is important, and it just feels like it's been disregarded. And yeah, I'm happy to try and answer any questions or direct them to staff that are sitting beside you.
Okay, sounds good. Looks like Mike had clarification on what the specific bylaw was.
No, later on, it was the fees bylaw.
All right, thank you. Director Roth, please go ahead.
Thank you. And thank you, Tanya. I can see your frustration and I understand it. In your submission, you said that your ask of the board is to pass a motion to amend current agricultural zones in the bylaw to include agritourism and agritourism accommodation to support diversification opportunities to farmers through local legislation. Is there anything in that does not fit with legislation or is somehow illegal? Because in some of the backup material, it was talking about legalities.
Yeah, thank you. So currently in the ACRD, you cannot run a short-term rental if you're not zoned to run a short-term rental. And all the agriculture zones within the ACRD do not list in one of the permitted activities as agritourism accommodation. So even though the ALC says that is one of the permitted uses, if you meet a long list of criteria to get there, you are allowed to have short-term rentals in that it fits in with the ALC rules of agritourism accommodation if you have farm status. So for operators in the ACRD, even though you're compliant with ALC with your farm status, and you're in an agriculture zone, that our local bylaws in the agriculture zone don't say specifically that you're allowed to have agritourism accommodation. So that means that you have to apply for a temporary use permit to have a short-term rental. And that short-term rental is good for 3 years, or that permit's good for 3 years, and then you need to renew. And then after that, if it's renewed and you're still not, the zoning is still not compatible with what you're doing, current bylaws is that we would have to rezone our property to be compliant with short-term rentals. So there's just kind of an overlap. And I mean, if I'm compliant with the ALC and we're doing our things with agritourism, it's an extra step, it's more paperwork, and it's more money to keep operating what we're doing on the farmland because of local legislation. So it's more of, we need a temporary use permit to operate, and it's now $1,100 to operate for 3 years for that one.
Can I just follow up with that? So what you're saying is if we agreed to your ask or to your request, we wouldn't be doing anything wrong. We would be fitting within the legislation. Is that correct? Because I like what you do.
Thank you. I had that ask in there because honestly, sitting on the Agriculture Development Committee, like the ask that I had in my presentation is one of the recommendations in the zoning bylaw update already, but it's sitting there while the OCPs are being done. So as committee members, we've been trying to get creative and go, what could we pull out? What's important? Maybe if we just, instead of giving you a piece of a pie, maybe we just take this little piece and we can just take it one little step at a time. And so that's what my ask was there. But since me putting that in there and having discussions with staff, you have a request for decision coming down in the agenda even further, which it wouldn't exempt the need for it at this time, but I feel like the ask is there as a recommendation from staff because it would be easier to do at this time, but I would ask that Mike speak to that.
Yeah, so there is a staff report later on, and I will, present and talk about that. The recommendation is just that the board can consider reducing fees for agritourism operations, and certainly the process to do that is significantly less involved than going through a rezone as an amendment to the zoning bylaw.
Are there any further comments or questions? Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, and I think maybe Mike just answered it. When I'm listening, and thank you, Tanya, for the presentation. It's really appreciated to have an understanding. Because when I'm looking at this, and Mike, maybe you can answer this. What would be required if it's my understanding is a zoning amendment to have that usage allowed within those zones. And what I'm hearing is that process is long, lengthy. And a shorter process would be to amend the fee structure for that particular license. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yes, that would be correct.
Okay, any further comments or questions, Director Cote?
Thank you. Through the chair to staff, I had asked earlier to look at amending this bylaw, I guess, the zoning structure regarding the agriculture tourism accommodation. And that was about all because I know that the zoning bylaw, we want to restructure that, but the board had asked to have the OCPs done first, and I really want to get those done. So I'd also asked if we could take a look at the temporary use permits for short-term vacation rentals, because I don't think that they're fair also. So would this be able to take a look at both of those at the same time for a restructure of the fees so that if we're going to be looking at it once, I don't want to look at it twice. Thank you.
Yeah, so my understanding of the issues is that the fee restructuring would be a more responsive response, like it would be faster. My understanding is that we were slated to do the work on updating the zoning bylaw before we embarked on kind of planning for planning. So this is, I think, a question for Mike, is that we kind of put that aside because the focus was going to be on the OCPs and the work that was going on there. So I think it really just becomes a question of, if we want to cover these things off, it's less a question of what order we do them, but it constitutes more work, and therefore would that be more requisition, and in what way would that occur? Follow up, go ahead.
Thank you. So the follow-up would be that right now Sprout Lake and Long Beach are looking at our OCPs, and this could be a part of that process through the OCPs, because we do have agricultural land at Sprout Lake. So adjusting those fees to allow for agriculture.
So that's my understanding, and Mike can clarify, because I think if we were to try to tackle the zoning bylaw, that's a whole separate process from OCPs, and therefore would need concurrent processes or one after the other. And that still runs into the capacity of pay the money or requisition it to do the work. And do we have the capacity to do that? Is that fair, Mike? Yeah. He indicated yes. Tanya, go ahead.
Thank you. In light of the request for decision that's on the agenda today, like I said, timing of me submitting things, it is more work and time consuming and would take away resources from the OCPs to do a bylaw amendment. And I think that is why the agriculture part of the bylaw amendment got denied in January. I'm just trying to articulate that the committee and people are trying to come up with creative ways of little things that could be done immediately, not necessarily knowing all the processes and the procedures to try and express like the reality of like, we need things done now. And it was, I mean, the negative impacts of just keeping restrictions and old bylaws in place has not been supportive of local agriculture and diversification opportunities. So ignore my request and presentation in light of the request for decision on the motion, because that one would be more immediate, is my understanding, and probably something that is easier to digest as the board.
I would say not to ignore the request, but rather just what are the ways that we can show as a board that we're trying to be responsive to the changes in the landscape for people who operate agricultural operations on agricultural land. And I think that's a fraught process with a lot of work around it. And we understand that. So I think it just comes down to what are the types of things, and this is more of a political conversation than a sequencing administrative work conversation. How do we show people that we actually care about what's going on in the agricultural sector on the agricultural lands? And so I think there are things that we can do to demonstrate that. And I think what we can do immediately or nearly immediately is something that can be on the table. I don't see anybody opposed to that. I do think, though, that because of the kind of zero-sum game when it comes to getting the OCPs done and the bylaws done, that's definitely a sequencing and conversation thing. So we'll see where we're at, but I think some folks have been waiting a long time for the OCP work to get done, and I think they're pretty intent on that. So I want to be responsive to that too, and I think the board would want to be. Director Boyko has been waiting patiently, so please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. The agricultural people, they need help as much as possible, whether it's tourism and other things that are coming to the board that are getting passed on or not being done. The OCP work is important, but it's going to take another at least 2.5 years to get through all of them. And things are going to come up, things are going to change. And if we got to pause things for a week or a day to get other things done, I think that's a very valid thing to help lots of people in the community. This is one example. There's going to be more things pop up, but we have to keep plowing ahead with the OCPs and get them done. But things will come up that we can help other people. And basically, we're reducing our restrictions that have already been opened up by the Agricultural Land Commission. We just have to say, yep, let's do it, move on. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Boyko. I think that's true. I think we can find the things that can be quick and fairly straightforward. Just looking at the long-term aspect, and I think this is the only thing I'm going to belabor, is that actually changing the bylaw is a concurrent process. It's not just, it may only take us like a day or two or a week of work, but that's hundreds of hours of staff time. So we just need to think on that the next time we sit down and do strategic planning. And I think that'll be important. Dr. Sparrow, go ahead.
Thank you for that. Yeah, you know the bind we're in, right? You've been sitting on this table before, so you know that, yeah, the speed we operate is not the same speed they're used to. I was wondering about the TUPs, right? They're good for 3 years and renewal for once more for 3 years. That's a provincial thing, I believe. Would it be more beneficial if we could push to get that doubled up again, so you'd have some sort of relief without rezoning your property in the meantime? Would that be a push you'd like?
From experience and learning through this whole process, if the zoning bylaw, and I mean, we're getting to, kind of feeling at the point where it's just like, try and put something in front of the board to see if little things will stick, because a big shotgun approach didn't work. The OCPs, and that's happening first. And that is a time, it's like farming. It takes time and effort, and it takes years before you see a change. And so understanding that the bylaw you can't start and stop it, it's just not going to work well. But I guess my ask is because there's so many things that prior to the recommendations for the bylaw changes coming to the board in 2022, we were already seeing issues with opportunities for diversification, because on agricultural land, you're only allowed to do so many things besides your primary farming, and you're only allowed to have so much of your parcel be committed to that secondary thing. And it can't make too much money more than your primary farming. And I mean, it's very heavily regulated. So if there's anything that the board or staff could see in the meantime, like the request for decision today, where we alter the fee bylaw instead of zoning bylaw, because that's something like a Band-Aid fix on that. Maybe there's other opportunities for things that we can do that have been asked. Like I'm here specifically talking about agritourism today. But there is struggles for properties less than 5 acres that are zoned agriculture here, but they're not in the ALR. And there's a cap on how many animals they're allowed to have. And we've gone through increase, and like the recommendation is if you go in to the zoning bylaw update, isn't increasing these numbers. And I mean, there's so many things that, like I said, well, I'm here to talk about agritourism today and accommodation. If there's other little quick fixes that can kind of at least alleviate a little bit instead of just leaving it status quo and doing nothing until the OCPs are done, to alleviate any stress or help anything with the agriculture in the valley, I would be supportive of that. But I mean, I get that you can't stop and start these big long processes. But if just like staff and whoever helped come up with the suggestion today to amend the zoning or the fee bylaw, because that is helpful, like anything's going to help. And it feels like we're at the point where it's like, this is what we wanted. No, like we're down here going like, can we have crumbs is what it feels like, to be honest with you.
All right, thank you. I think what that can be is a conversation, because it feels like to me that the committee and the people who've been thinking about this have been taking that specific situation in mind as well. So if we can work together to identify opportunities that are amenable to the area directors, I think specifically, and to a lesser degree to Fino, because I don't know how much say you get in ALR related planning. I know that you're involved in planning in some places in the regional district, is to find out where we can provide some time and attention to deal with some of these things. I would like you and everyone who's thinking about this, you came here, I'm sorry, to start thinking on the types of things we can do outside of that kind of planning bylaw work. Are there things that we can lobby for and talk to the province about to get things changed on the ALC side, on the provincial side? Because they can do a lot of things unilaterally that may solve some of our problems if we're smart about who we team up with in ABICC and the rest of UBCM, and find out how we can change some of those things. Because if a provincial change comes that addresses some of these concerns from that angle, then we don't have to take the time or the money to do it ourselves, right? So go ahead.
Thank you. I would just reiterate that the local bylaws are more restrictive in some of these things than the ALC. So it's at this level, some of that stuff needs to change. But there's always lobbying the province. But if we're looking at specific things at our level of government, that could be helpful. There's that. I mean, because I would have loved to have come here today and presented on, hey, agritourism accommodation is allowed by the ALC after you meet all this criteria. If it was zoned here, we'd be allowed to doing it here, because I would rather lobby the government and say, hey, the ALC says short-term accommodation is okay here. Why is another level of government enforcing short-term rentals where it's now overlapped on farmland, and I have to pay more fees now to the province to continue operating? So I'll put that one forward to you when you do your lobby.
Yeah, no, that would be good. Thank you. So those are the types of things where if there are solutions anywhere, we should explore them. I think this comes down to decisions have consequences, and that this is one of them. I think they were partly contemplated, and I think that can be discussed at a level where the decisions and recommendations can get made in context. Because I think if we were to do some of the things you're talking about, it would still cost money and time, and that might push OCPs. So the sequencing of OCPs might matter and so on and so forth. And I just don't know what those costs or times would look like if we were to contemplate them. So I can't guarantee anything, but I can ask the committees to have the relevant conversations and for staff to come back with contextual information that if you were board to make these decisions, it would have these consequences for these communities. And I think we've had that report already, but I think it wasn't as specific as this, so there may be some time and cost savings as a result of that. So I want to thank everyone who's been involved in this discussion. You've shown that you've thought about that and the considerations that the board has to take into it. And I think what's going to happen is a discussion of the relevant folks to either respond or not. And I think that's about as much as we can expect at the moment. So thank you for the work that's being done. Any further comments or questions? Okay, on behalf of the board, it's always great to see you. Thank you for coming and have a good one. Okay, before I forget, I was supposed to go to Penny for a motion to invite the Ministry of Transportation to a committee of the whole or the board to have a conversation about, you just want to call it Highway 4A, like Highway 4? Like the Cameron Bluffs and Cameron Lake and Cathedral Grove situation? I don't know how to say that, but is that generally the idea?
Yes, there's gonna be some changes on River Road,
Mhm.
the roundabout, the Johnson Road. And also, what's happening within Cathedral Grove. I see that now. Well, I'll make that motion.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Solda. Do you want to continue?
Yes, I have big concerns. I just drove through there and they put road barriers all along the side of the highway now. So there is just a very small parking lot. I'd rather see that whole thing closed than what they've got there now because it's extremely dangerous. There was cars parked behind cars when I came through. Edging out onto the highway. And now that they have that barrier, also those posts in the middle, it's very dangerous. So I'd like to know what their plans are. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Further comment, Director Solda?
So if we do the invitation, which is great, and when they come next, but if we have some dangerous parking going on now, we should be checking and seeing what's going on before that. If somebody has an accident. It just depends on how long it's going to take to get them here to this table to what's happening right now. That's what.
Okay, sounds good. I'm sympathetic to Director Cote's opinions on the matter. I would like to see it either closed or something to be done, but this goes back 10 years on parking lots and protests and all of that. Director, go ahead, Cal. Director Roberts. Oh, you got it.
Thank you. Yeah, I concur. And this is off season. So you know what it's like during the summer when they're parked on both sides of the road, not only in the parking areas, but it was my impression that the ministry was going to create a large parking lot and actually have a bus to pick people up to transport them back and forth. That's never happened. But at least they've taken those road bumps out of there, which was stupid to put in for a highway, but it was to slow traffic down so people didn't get run over. So I look forward to hearing what they have to say. Thank you.
Thanks. Director Solda.
Oh, I definitely agree with Penny, with Director Cote. It's just that I'm looking at an immediate situation here, like we close it now, open it up, or do whatever we're doing. It's just staff just making a call and finding out what their intent is at this moment for there. And there's a danger.
Yeah, I think that can be a follow-up action, and then they can provide a report maybe sooner than the ministry can show up. We'll see. Any further comments on the motion itself? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Thank you, Director Cote. Alrighty, so that brings us to correspondence for action. We have an item regarding the organizing committee for FIFA 2026 activities in the Alberni Valley. It's a request for a letter of support. Does anyone want to speak to this? Or potentially move a motion? Dr. Solda, go ahead.
I'll move the motion. Do you want me to read it out or?
Yes, please.
I'll move that the Alberni Clicquot Regional District Board of Directors forward a letter of to the organizing committee for FIBA 2026 activities in the Alberni Valley, supporting their request to become a host city for the World Cup playing nation during FIBA 2026. And just, I'll wait for a seconder and then.
Is there a seconder? Thank you, Director Cote. Please go ahead.
And just so you know, the city has sent a letter of support too.
All right, thank you. Are there any more discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Alrighty, that brings us to item 7, correspondence for information. Would anyone like to pull anything up? If not, we could have a motion to receive the correspondence for information. Dr. Sparrow, please go ahead, and then Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Can I pull out the one there about short-term rental challenges and concerns and Columbia Shuswap Regional District?
Please go ahead.
Well, they seem to be having a problem with their short-term rentals and their TUPs, so they have the same thing where it's good for 3 years and then good for 3 more years, and then you gotta get rezoned. Would it be appropriate to ask staff to send a letter to their government saying, in light of what's happening globally in the last little while, maybe they could take these TUPs and make them into 4 times renewals or 3 times renewals, so we can get like a 12-year lifespan out of them before they have to rezone as a quick fix for what we're having right now, because people are gonna run up to their 6-year limit quickly the next few months. Is it possible to get a motion to put a letter forward?
I think so. I think there's potential for that. Let's have that discussion after the information that
All
I
right,
added to the
we'll do
agenda.
that.
Okay. Would anyone like to, Dr. Cote?
Thank you. Just a reminder about AVICC convention. It's our 76th, April 11th to the 13th, and people need to be registered and have their accommodations in place. We're looking at resolutions right now. And unfortunately, our resolution that we put forward for the executive resolution was not accepted. So it would have to be a late off the floor or wait till UBCM for next year. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Director Cote. Any further items to be pulled out or discussed? Do we have a motion to receive the items for information? Thank you, Director Sparrow, seconded by Dr. Cote. Comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Dr. Sparrow, did you want to put your item on the floor, a potential motion for? I don't want to forget everything, so please list them off.
And we could direct staff to make a letter about the TPUs. They said, that one?
Yeah, I think that's the crux of it.
Yeah.
So to have a letter, to have a discussion with the provincial government about potentially making that change to because the act imposes the 2 renewal limit. Is that what you're saying? Okay. That can also be something that we set up for conversations at UBCM or AVICC as well. Do we have a seconder for the motion? Thank you, Dr. Silva. Any further comments? Is the motion fairly clear? Dr. Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just wanting a little clarity on the motion. I do have challenges for extending TUPs, and I don't know if this is specific to this particular type of TU for this particular usage, because there are some real challenges with the extending TUPs for long periods of time. The intended purposes of them are very specific in what we're in the intended use of them. And so I'm just cautious of that. I just wanted a little clarity on what the motion was. If it's simply to have that discussion, I'm more than willing to support the motion. I just wanted to be clear that that is what is the gist of the motion.
Well, there's 2 things here, right? Because after 2 times, 6 years, you have to rezone your property, which is the way it is now. Unfortunately, some people can't rezone their property easily. And so they're crushed. The second thing is with the world the way it is right now, we may get more influx of people on that. So if we have a TUP extended, they'll give us a chance to go through and see what's happening in a few years. They'll give us a chance to do our OCPs and then get our bylaws in place so we can fix the issues we're having right now, because we're bumping our TUPs against our bylaws, against our OCPs, and we're sort of stuck in the mud here. So if we can ask if they can be extended, and if they would be, even for the short term, we can get through our problems and probably help everybody around us too.
Would it be fair to ask that this come as a recommendation from maybe the EA committee then? Just so that it can be discussed more freely and then have a recommendation with what we'll ask for directly? Maybe. Director Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you. The chat that we're having today with regard to agritourism is coming from a specific group that's already had the rules loosened by the BC government to help agritourism and the agricultural producers in the valley. All we have to do is change our bylaws to accept it. Extending the entire TUPs or asking for them to go for 12 years instead of 6 is a whole other animal that applies to a whole much broader range of things. And I agree with Director Steer is that some people have gone through the effort of rezoning, and I'm not going to say any names, but there's lots of them in this room and other people that are listening. And should we not be punishing them for doing something that is potentially right, as opposed to people that have just put in a TUP? And we went through this last summer where we had an application to renew a TUP where they let it expire for a year and then have it come back. And there's no punishment for anybody doing this. And when it comes up in another 2 years, when it expires, there'll be nothing to say, hey, you're still operating your Airbnb without a license. So we have to figure out a balance of allowing tourism to happen, but also following some kind of rules. And there's a way to do it, but I don't think a blanket statement of requesting an extra 6 years is a way to go. And if you just look at the amount of TUPs that actually exist that are permitted in the valley, I mean, there's 25 or something, and there's hundreds out there. So no one's actually following it anyways. Thank you.
Okay. With that in mind, then, do we want to amend the motion to refer the topic to the electoral area committee? And then just have that discussion come back? That's okay?
Sure, we can do that. Sure.
Okay, let's do it with an amendment just so that it's all procedurally okay, because I don't think we have adopted the procedures bylaw or the new procedures bylaw yet. Director Cote, would you be willing to put forward that amendment?
I would put forward that amendment, yes.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Sparrow? Okay, all those in favor of changing the motion to be referring it to? All right, all those in favor? Motion carried. Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor of the motion now that it's amended? Okay, all opposed? Okay, motion carried. All right, thank you. So this will be on the next or on a EA Directors Committee meeting, and then it'll come back for a recommendation. Okay, thank you all for that. That brings us to item 8. Requests for decisions and bylaws. So first up is the financial plan. Terry, please take it away.
Thank
And
you.
go slow because I'm going to grab coffee.
Sounds good. So I'm pleased to present today the draft 2025 to 2029 financial plan for your consideration and adoption. The plan is a result of significant discussion and includes financial increases targeted to address the evolving needs of our region while trying to balance the fiscal responsibility and sustainability aspect. So the 2025 budget is approximately $31 million and is a approximately 7% increase from tax increase from the prior year. The plan also includes about $11 million worth of capital projects, many of which that are funded from senior levels of government. So we're taking advantage of grants wherever we can to get infrastructure upgrades done. So today we're looking for second reading, third reading, and adoption. There is one small change that I anticipate from Director Sparrow regarding the individual EA funds. So he has some language there if he chooses to use that. And I just would like to remind the directors that if we are wanting to make any other changes, if we could do that during second reading from a procedural standpoint, that would be great. And in closing, I just want to say that I appreciate all the great discussion and time that the directors have spent to understand this financial plan, and that we had some great consultation in the region this year, which was fantastic. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Just to remind everyone, and you can confirm this either Heather or Terry, we would move the second reading and then make the amendments. Is that correct?
Yes, please. So move in second reading, don't vote on it, but then do the amendments and then vote on second reading as amended, please.
Great, thank you. Director Cote.
Thank you. Conversation on the budget. So I have received a letter and a publicized newsletter in Sprout Lake. This letter from Ross Curtis, who did a presentation about a month ago or so to this board. Sprout Lake Property Owners Association. They were asking that I received this on Monday at about just before 2 o'clock in the afternoon, asking for the budget to be amended with some comparing Sprout Lake to the other electoral areas in the region. There's been, as Terry pointed out, there's been months of working on the budget, and she checked and there was no questions coming from this organization. It is quite unfair to be coming at Monday, the days before we are adopting the budget, to try and re-establish a budget that's gone through a board process and very in-depth. So I would invite this organization to be more involved in the future, to understand how the budget works. I don't really see that there's any point at this point to try and make any amendments. We're too far down. Everything's been approved. So, but I just wanted to make note that they have actually contacted me, but it's in the 11th hour. So with that, I would like to actually move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give second reading to the bylaw cited as bylaw F1170 2025 to 2029 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconded by Dr. Steer. Thank you. And for your comments, Dr. Cote, I was CC'd on the same message. And so I think while we can't be responsive to any of those requests in the budget, the discussions kind of lead to conversations around apportionment and how all that is dealt with. And I think that's a conversation that Director Steer has already brought up maybe about a month and a half ago. So I think during our strategic planning discussions for this next upcoming year, we should have a real conversation about how that might look like, because then it kind of intersects with a bunch of other concerns and considerations around how our communities relate to one another and how things are shifting in regards to the global economy and all that kind of thing too. So we can have that conversation. I think it's right to not try to fight for them now, because they have to be longer conversations that are possibly facilitated. So I think that instinct is correct. You can still have the conversations that they're asking for in the future and be responsive to those concerns, because it really does come down to, I think, the considerations around high value property owners and residents feeling the pinch, and it feels like it's disproportionate. And that's not the whole case, because, a lot of these folks are, equity rich, but cash poor, right? And that kind of goes back to what Director Steer was talking about. So I think there's ways we can have the discussion. I don't want anyone to expect that discussion to go well or not be messy, though. Okay. Apportionment discussions are fraught with a lot of different considerations, and usually it ends up nothing happens because it's just too hard. But we can have discussions about what that might look like for other types of services, which is also something that Director Steers talked about too. So I don't look forward to those conversations in terms of having to make sure that they're not bun fights, but I do look forward to that conversation because it's a conversation at a foundational governance level, and we should always check in on that. With that being said, we'll go to Director Boyko and then Director Silva.
Thank you, Chair. I got 3 questions, and some will go to Terry and some will go to us. First question is, on point 83, the library, there was a percent increase that was assumed. I just wonder what it was because there was no financial strategic plan provided by the library. I got two more after that. Thank you.
So for like future years, 2026 to 2029.
Correct.
I can quickly look. Our default for regional district right now is 3%. My only hesitation of telling you that number is that if I had a 5-year last year from them, I would have put in what they had as their percentage increases. So while you ask your other questions, I will just double check, because at some point I have seen at least 2026 and 2027 projections, but I don't know how accurate those are now that they've gone back to the drawing board.
Understood. Yeah, when I look at the numbers just briefly in my head, they're much more than 3%. Second question is, on the regional parks number 087, we had removed the part about the parking for potential Log Trail and removed the 2027 $20,000 for Halkey Crossing design, but they're still in there. We're looking to remove those in the future. It doesn't affect this year's budget, but just in the next years.
I think I'll quickly look, but I think it should have removed the construction portion, but we left the feasibility work just in case the Parks Working Group Committee wants to proceed with the investigation of that. So we just left those earmarked there, but we removed the construction aspect of it until a feasibility study as to whether they even want to proceed with it would be done. But again, they are in future years, and that whole work plan related to regional parks will be put through that working group to determine next steps.
Perfect. Thank you. Final question relates to the Chamber of Commerce, the $40,000 that was added to the potential grant need that we're going to be discussing in a month or so. What line item is that on the budget there?
1 second. It's in the Alberni Valley and Bamfield
Grant need.
grant need.
So that's where it went from 75,000 to whatever 40,000 is on top of that.
Yes.
Okay. So in number 088, I kind of want to make a motion or put a notice of motion that the funds that are directed to the city of Port Alberni to allocate towards the McLean Mill Grant and Aid that started in 1992 with bylaw 777 actually get used for operation funds. So I went and looked up this, and basically the way it's worded is the funds are to be used for operation costs. And with the Chamber of Commerce operating them, we're already sending $30,000 towards the operations, which probably goes to the Chamber of Commerce anyways, but we don't get to see their budget. But instead, the city is reallocating that to capital costs. So I would like to make a motion to make sure the city actually puts it towards operating costs, which will help defray and potentially reopen the tourism center without any additional tax burden on the electoral areas, because we're already putting money into that. So I don't know if we want to call that a motion right now or a notice of motion for the future. That's up to the chair. Thank you.
Okay, I need to seek kind of understanding there. You're asking that the money that we send get used that way? Because
so in the original wording of the bylaw from 1992, bylaw 777, the electoral areas put in $30,000 towards the operation cost and help defray that. It's very clear. But that has been changed, and now it's being directed towards capital cost. If we did put it towards operating cost, that could go towards the Chamber of Commerce, because they're the ones operating it, and the tax money that the electoral areas are already putting towards the McLean's Mill could be helping to defray the costs for the tourism center. Thank you.
Okay, still not sure yet. Let's hold on to that for a moment. Director Roth?
I'd like to second that motion if need be, but I agree completely with what Director Boyko says. It's accurate to what I know too.
Thank you. We'll go to Terry and then Director Minions.
Just two things. So the McLean, and I will need some clarity from the city, but the McLean Mill bylaw for the grant that comes from the regional district is for the historic site aspect of it. So I definitely understand what Director Boyko is saying, but I'm not sure if there's a difference between like if the chamber is actually running the historic site aspect of the mill or not. So we would have to ask for clarity. I will say that I don't think this needs to be done as part of the reading of the bylaw. We could do it after we adopt the bylaw and state that you want to hold the funds for clarity around what they're used for at the city, or that they're to be used if possible to offset or something. I don't think it necessarily, it's not changing the numbers, so I don't think it necessarily needs to be done as part of the readings for the bylaw, but could be done as soon as the bylaw is adopted.
That might be the best way to go about it. Thank you. Dr. Minions?
Thank you. I'm not sure on kind of the history. I trust what Director Boyko is bringing forward in terms of the original intent, but I know I've been participating in these budget discussions for 7 years on the board, and every single time I've been very clear on behalf of the city that the funds for McLean Mill are for capital. And so I think at some point along the way, I completely trust that that changed. We have always allocated those funds in our financial plan. You can go in and look at the financial plan that those are allocated to capital projects. Whether that was right or wrong, I do think at some point it was an intentional change, and probably the direction from this board, but maybe we could further explore that as a starting point. I think Director Boyko's point of how it started, I'm sure is correct, but I know that we've had lots of conversations at this board table during this time about specifically what those would go to, with actually really firm direction from the board that they did not want it to be going to operating, rather it was for capital projects. I wanted to bring forward as well that we have coming to council in the very near future, I think possibly not this coming meeting, but the following one, we're bringing forward the John Dam report. That is the capital asset management report that was done a few years ago for McLean Mill, for specifically the historic site, to talk about the projects that needed to be done, how to do them in a way that would meet the National Historic Site standard. And we're going to bring a bit of a progress report on what we have done and what is still remaining, so that we can have a greater conversation about what do we want to do? Because honestly, some of it, in terms of capital at McLean Mill, we may choose to just leave and allow it to naturalize, and that is okay in our agreement as well. Some things we will fix up to a historic standard. So I think we're recognizing we can't do everything, and we want to have a greater conversation about what we should prioritize with the funds that we have. So I think a few different conversations here that we could have. Once council sees that report, I'd love to bring that report to the regional district as well, because this board and this government have been contributing to that work over the last many years. So yeah, and then lastly, I did just want to confirm that the Chamber of Commerce has nothing to do with managing the historic site. They are not responsible for it. They certainly are not responsible for the capital work of it. The city does that on our own, with support from various sources, the regional district being one of them. And I think even within the Chamber of Commerce, the operations of the visitor center and the operations of McLean Mill, I mean, I know are completely different budgets. They're very different operations. So funding one does not, like the city holds 2 different contracts, and we manage those contracts completely separately with that entity. So I just think we should be cautious about overlapping too much. But if nothing else, I think some additional information would be really valuable here. And I'm happy to make sure the John Dam report comes forward with our update kind of cover that we're putting on it, so that everyone can have a good understanding of the work that's been going on out there and the value of it. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Director Boyko, go ahead.
Sorry, just gotta mute myself. Thank you, and thank you for comments from the mayor there. Yeah, there's lots of money flying around there. We just gotta make sure things are going to where they're supposed to go. So here's what it says in the bylaw. And whereas our regional board, ACRD, wishes to establish a local service for the purpose of providing a contribution to the cost of operating the museum known as the McLean Mill Historic Site. So we just got to make sure the wording is, and we're putting money into the right place. And perfect, thank you very much. But yes, I think this should, even though it's on budget this year, I think we should have a serious talk about this at some point in the future. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Dr. Roth?
Thank you. I'm curious to know if the Chamber's contract covers the camping area. And I want to know this because the camping area is within the historic portion. So I'm just curious how that works. Thank you.
Yeah, it seems like this can be answered in a future discussion. So I'm wondering if the mover and seconder would be amenable to have this be referred to, I think, the AVB committee? Would that be the right place to discuss all of these kind of technical details on the mill?
Yeah, I think that would be a good spot. I don't know if we have a motion on the table right now, though. But yes, we could do that after we adopt the budget.
Okay, how about we just move that this topic be referred to the AVB committee after we get through the budget? Is that okay, Dr. Boyko? Yeah? Okay. Just like interrupt me if I forget. I don't want to do the same thing that I did to Dr. Cote. All right, thank you. Okay, with that in mind, are there any other items in regards to the budget itself? Or, sorry, financial plan. Go ahead, Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. I'd like to make a motion that the board of directors amend bylaw, hold on. F1170 Trail Area Administration, page 22, by decreasing the area of Cherry Creek administration under the tax requisition amounts by $1,000 in each of the years 2025 to 2029.
Seconded by Director Cote. Any further comments or questions? Thank you for providing a written motion on that. That makes it a lot easier. Hopefully folks at home got an email. Yeah.
No, sorry, it was a small change that I remembered last minute. So just for here in the room,
Okay.
but just for clarity, it's just affecting the Cherry Creek area. So
Okay. With that in mind, I think that's amenable. So this is an amending motion to the second reading. Any further comment on it? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Are there any other amending motions to second reading? All right, going once, going twice. All righty, so now we have an amended second reading motion. Would anyone, oh no, you don't have to remove it. It's already on the table. Okay, seeing no other comments, all those in favor of the amended second reading? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you. I think that's consensus. All right, that brings us to third reading. Director Cote?
Sure. I'll move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors give third reading to the bylaw cited as bylaw F1170 2025 to 2029 Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Financial Plan.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Solda. Any further comments? I want to know if that's a tungsten ring now, Dr. Boyko. And no further comments. Oh yeah. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Thank you for third reading.
It is not tungsten. I can't afford that. Thank you.
Oh, okay. All right, that brings us to the final. Would anyone like to move adoption? Thank you, Director Steer, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you. Okay. That brings us to item B. Oh, thank you. Yes, Dr. Boyko, would you like to move to refer the item surrounding, do you just call it McLean Mill generally? Yeah. To the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'll make a motion to refer the direction of funds to the Alberni Valley and Bamfield Committee at the next available meeting time. Thank you very much.
Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? A motion carried. Thank you. All right. That brings us to item 8B, which is request for decision regarding inclusive regional governance. Cynthia, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So this is to approve amending the inclusive regional governance consulting services contract with EcoPlan International to increase by $30,000. So this is completely funded. We did receive 95,000 from the Ministry of Housing and Municipal Affairs, as well as 18,500 from UBCM. So at the start of this initiative, we were aware that we could potentially be receiving more funding through the ministry. So the scope of work was made in a way that was flexible for this. And if there's any questions about the contract, we could potentially bring this to the next board meeting as an in-camera item.
Thank you. Any comments or questions? Director Boyko, please go ahead.
Just a quick question. So there was an original contract for the amount and that was fully funded, and now they're asking for another 30,000. I just wondered, are we adding more meetings or what the money is going towards? And then this additional 30,000, just to be clarified, just to clarify to all, is also grant funded, or is that coming from a different place? Thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Cynthia.
Thanks. So yes, this is completely funded through the funding that was provided through the ministry. And the funding will be used to host another session with the finance staff from the 10 nations, as well as the member municipalities, as well as creating more resources through EcoPlan. So the province did ask us to look into specific questions in this work and in their consideration for legislative reform. So we feel like that more resources can be developed to support in that process.
Go ahead, Director Boyko.
So we get one more meeting for $30,000 and some paperwork, just to make sure that's exactly what's on the table here.
So it's about 30 grand for the amount of work that's needed to get to that meeting, as well as take the information from that meeting to create more materials that will provide a bit of a template for the provincial government to use us as a pilot project, potentially. So it's all kind of working towards how do we enact this in a way that makes sense. And so there's probably another back and forth in regards to that with the province. So there may be some extra work. So that would be the 30 grand as far as I know. Cynthia, go ahead.
Yeah, just wanted to add that at the January session for inclusive regional governance, we did have a number of nations participate, and one of their requests was to have ACRD staff and elected officials visit the communities to really look at what services they could potentially offer. So I know that was considered in this budget amount as well, if we do have the time and resources available to visit the communities and have those discussions with either their elected officials or staff.
So instead of one more meeting, we should be saying one more round of meetings. Is that what you mean? Okay. That's
No,
probably
that clarifies it a bit more, and I'm looking forward to seeing the exhaustive materials that we're going to be getting and carry on from there. Thank you.
all right. Thank you, Director Boyko. Any further comments? Seeing none. Was this moved? No, I don't believe it was. Would anyone like to move the motion? Director Roberts, thank you, and seconded by Director Steer. Any further comment? All right, all those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. All right, that brings us to item C, which is West Coast Emergency Cultural Awareness Safety Plan. Terry, please go ahead.
Thank you. So this request for proposal opportunity was conducted to fund a contractor for the development of an emergency cultural awareness and safety plan. With this project, the ACRD has partnered with Huayet, Uthuatha, Uchaklasit, Tokwat, Taloquiet, Sashat, Port Alberni, Tofino, and Ucluelet. So we've grouped everyone together, and this initiative aligns with the regulations and requirements that are part of that new Emergency and Disaster Management Act. There were 5 submissions to this RFP opportunity, and the proposals were evaluated by a team consisting of many of those regional partners that I just listed. The recommendation is to award to KPMG, and just a reminder that this project is fully funded. The ACRD received some grant money, but then the regional partners also provided the funding that they had received. So we're leveraging all that money to do one contract and one collaborative approach to the work. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that. Any comments or questions or motions? Director Roberts, please go ahead.
Sorry, I'm not used to this. Like to make the motion that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors award the West Coast Emergency Cultural Awareness and Safety Plan contract to KPMG LLP in the amount of $114,000 excluding GST, and authorize the CAO to negotiate and execute the contract on behalf of the ACRD.
Seconded by Director Solda. Everyone, would anyone like to have any comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried. Thanks, Karen. All right, that brings us to item D, solid waste management plan engagement update and next steps. Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, this was presented by Jody at the last committee of the whole meeting on March 12th, I believe. And she did an in-depth presentation, really giving an overview of the public engagement that we did in the fall, the results of that, some highlights on what the top priorities were, and some lessons that we've learned and things that we want to continue to focus on. And then she also did a highlight of some of the great work that we've done so far on the solid waste management plan, an overview of all the steps and the completed work done. And then highlighted areas that we feel it's really important to add some time into the process for, and that's including the West Coast Landfill DOCP update, continuing to work on the tenure for the Alberni Valley landfill, doing some more work on the waste composition data and a bit of education and information in the community. The committee supported the recommendation to add in that additional time to do that work so that when we do have our completed solid waste management plan, it will be a robust and really valuable document for us and for the region. And we are also looking to continue to keep the Solid Waste Management Plan Advisory Committee active until we complete the plan, and that will just sort of extend their time frame by a little while. I am happy to answer any questions anyone has.
Great, thank you. Any comments or questions? The motions look like they're separate motions as well, so we'll have to do two of them. Director Steer, please go ahead.
Yeah, if it's okay, I would like to make the motion that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors receive the Phase 2 Public Engagement Summary document for information.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Steer. Or sorry, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? I see none. All those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried.
And that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors approve the revised timeline to accommodate additional actions necessary for the further development of the solid waste management plan.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roberts. Any further comments? See none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Welcome back, Director Coots. Do you have transition lenses? You're in sunglasses mode. All right. You just got back then. Thank you for coming back. Alrighty, motion carried. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 8E, Bamfield Community Sewer System Summary. Jenny, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yes, so as everyone is aware, we did intensive engagement on looking at whether we wanted to establish a sewer system in Bamfield over the last little while. And as part of that process, we did look at whether we wanted to establish regulatory bylaws to manage the septic systems in Bamfield, because even though we're not going to be proceeding with the community sewer system, there is still concerns that the community has raised about the inlet quality and the quality of in some systems that might be putting effluent into the inlet. So staff have prepared a report for the Bamfield Advisory Committee talking about that and recommending that we do not proceed with that. Part of the reason is that there is current systems in place. So there's 2 provincial regulations that are available to monitor and really enforce those regulations. And it would be best if we just continue to use that regulations. We do have the ability, of course, regional districts can implement new bylaws to regulate that on top of that, but we do not have staff allocation to that. There would be a cost to that, and it would be extensive to move forward. The committee reviewed that and supported that recommendation, and that is the resolution that is in front of the board. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, so the resolution is to not do something, but I think it's important that we communicate that. Director Beckett and then Director Roth.
Thank you. And I think you articulated that really well. But I'm going to, if you don't mind, just make a short comment and then a recommendation given some input that I've received from a couple of folks in the community. Jenny, I'll be looking for you to confirm what I'm saying, and then we can have a quick discussion about a recommendation that I may have. So the community, as you said, resoundingly voted to reject a sewer system service, and the Bamfield Area Service Committee indicated they did not support any change to the current governance of commercial and residential septic systems. Consequently, my understanding of this motion is to put this matter to bed so that we can focus on other important matters like parking, OCP changes, submarine lines, housing, West Side fire station to be replaced, etc. So my understanding is exactly what you said, that there is no change to the governance of the commercial and residential. It's either the province or it's VHA. And I'm just wondering if, and I didn't look on the website to be honest with you, but do we have something on the website that if a resident in Bamfield or any of the communities within the ACRD, someone had a question about septic systems or a complaint about septic systems, our website would point them to either the province or the or VHA. So I'll turn it back over to Jenny.
Thanks.
Yes, during the engagement, we did end up creating an FAQ specifically about septic systems, and I'll double check and see where that is, and if it might have got lost just as part of the engagement, we can take that, we'll make sure that it's extremely clear and just specifies how to contact VHA and what the process is, and we can put that front and center on the whatever webpage that will belong.
I'll just note that for those of us who maybe knew, VHA means Island Health. Thank you. Dr. Roth and then Dr. Boyko.
Thank you. What Jenny was talking about doesn't really reflect what is written here in our agenda package. And as far as the recommended motion, which I'm against, it says that the Alberni-Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors directs staff to address concerns on direct discharge or failing septic systems to the appropriate provincial authority for compliance. So that's not what Jenny's saying, is it? Like, I'm kind of confused here. What's going on?
I can clarify that. I think I can understand the misunderstanding on that. Essentially, this is what we've always done. So if people don't understand that it is the province that regulates this, sometimes we'll get a call. And then what we do is we'll take that complaint and we would then just direct it to Island Health if it's on a small system. So the wording, although it might not seem clear, is really just to continue to refer anything we receive to Island Health as we have in the past.
So why is this even in the agenda package, really? And also, I noticed on page 79 of our meeting package that staff noted there was another option to be considered. And it said, if the Bamfield Area Services Committee would like to investigate the establishment of a local bylaw to regulate the maintenance of on-site sewage systems, staff could look at creating a bylaw through either the current rural planning service or the establishment of a new service. And I looked through legislation and I found that the public health bylaws regulation requires that a municipal council or regional district board must consult with the regional health board or the medical health officer responsible for public health matters within the jurisdiction before any health-related bylaw can be adopted. So I feel like, well, when I read all of this, it felt like we should stay in our own lane and there's no need to duplicate services. But it sounds like there isn't even an issue and it doesn't need to be here. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think the way that the wording works on that particular part of the law is that before it's passed, before it's adopted, you need to show that you've consulted with the relevant authority. The recommendation is to not do that. And part of the reason why the recommendation is to not do a thing is just to assuage concerns from from the public in terms of what it is that will be done or won't be done. So the idea is that nothing is really changing in regards to how this is handled anyway, and it's more of a communications exercise to build trust.
So this actually did the opposite. It didn't build trust. It made a whole lot of people angry. So
Well-
I don't understand it.
So it does clarify the consideration, especially in this discussion. So how people react to an action or inaction depends on their ability to understand it as well. So that's why we're clarifying it here. So I think that's pretty much how the system should be working, is clarifying intent and just making sure people understand what's actually being done, rather than being concerned about what will be done without clarifying. So that's why we're doing it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Funny way of doing it. Thanks.
A clarifying way of doing it. Dr. Boyko, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Just so all the electoral area directors know, this applies to every electoral area. This is not Bamfield specific. So some of the concerns that came up, and I think we're making sure we're addressing them here, is this is not active bylaw enforcement where staff is going up to VHA and saying this property is doing this. I just want to make sure that that is exactly the intent, that is not the case, that we're not advocating and giving staff the time and resources to do active bylaw enforcement on a bylaw that doesn't exist on sewer systems that is not that is not in the purview of the ACRD. Is that correct, right?
That's explicitly what's in the briefing note, yes.
Perfect. And yeah, and if staff, we've heard many times in here that they're already overworked and there's not many extra hours for any of this. So I want to make sure everyone's very clear that this does apply to every electoral area. Thank you.
Yes, and that's why the recommendation was to not do that. So it's once again clarifying. So with that in mind, do we have someone who's willing to put forward the motion? Thank you, Director Beckett. The motion, could you read it out, please? And then seconded by Director Sparrow.
Absolutely. That the Alberni-Claycott Regional District Board of Directors direct staff to address concerns on direct discharge or failing septic systems to the appropriate provincial authority for compliance.
Thank you. And seconded by Director Sparrow. Okay, any comments? Oh, Dr. Roth, please go ahead.
So I don't understand this. I have to say this because that says to me that the ACRD directs staff to address concerns of direct discharge or failing septic systems to the appropriate provincial authority for compliance, who would be the Ministry of Health or the Ministry of Environment.
It's MOE for commercial, and it's Island Health, not the Ministry of Health. So the delegated authority, I guess.
So why wouldn't we just leave that to the people? Like, I don't understand why we're taking this on.
Well, we're not changing anything. That's the practice that we've done the whole time. Yeah.
So we've made complaints to the ministry? Is that what you're saying?
No, we've forwarded complaints that citizens want to make.
So why are we a middle person? I don't understand that. Like right now, the ministry has an effective complaint mechanism in place that doesn't require or request local government or the ACRD to participate in it. So I don't understand this.
Okay, Director Cote.
Thank you. I've received many calls regarding septic issues. And they talked with staff about it, and they've received the calls as well. And we don't deal with septic issues, but we do referrals. So we would tell the people, the complainant, to call Island Health Authority or for residential anyways. And that's the extent that we would do.
Jenny?
Yeah, I have maybe a parallel that'll make it easier to understand. So as the regional district, we don't always regulate things. So like if there's a complaint about roads in the electoral areas, then we will refer that complaint to the Ministry of Transportation. So similarly, if there's a complaint about septic systems, we're not the regulatory authority, but we do
pass along those concerns. And that might give better context because it's not just this, it's in lots of cases where we work with our provincial folks. So we'll continue to direct those concerns to the appropriate agencies.
Okay, thank you. Director Beckett and then Director Sparrow.
Thank you. I just wanted to also identify that once this matter was in front of me on the agenda, I had a number of discussions with Jenny about this so that I could seek clarification as well. And, you know, with respect to the referral, that's exactly what Jenny had said to me, is that if, you know, Mrs. Smith calls from Banfield and says, what do I do? I've got a problem with my septic, or I've got a problem with my neighbor. And Jenny made it very clear that good customer service, Mrs. Smith, you can either call directly or we can help you with a referral. And that was why I mentioned just a moment ago that something on our website, again, to identify exactly what we've just been talking about, how to get hold of the right agency, where can you get the help, and if you need a hand, ACRD is there to give you a hand as well. But I think I think it's been clarified by staff, and I appreciate their help. Thank you.
Okay. Director Roth, please go ahead.
Thank you. So what you're saying, or what is being said, is that if there is a call to the ACRD, the response would be that they would give the complainant contact information for the Ministry of Health, or like it's not going to be an ACRD complaint is what I'm trying to establish. It's just going to be a relay.
Yeah. So it would be either a link or give someone a phone number or that sort of thing. Okay. Director Boyko and then, or sorry, Director Sparrow and then Director Boyko.
Thank you. Maybe we can put some clarity towards this. I have people that are moved into our area around, right? And they want to know, well, who do they phone, contact in the city for the roads? I have to tell them the roads are not part of the city. You have to phone MCON. What day's garbage pickup? What day do you want it to be? Because it's under contract. Now you're not part of the city. Same with the septic. Well, what's failing? Who do I phone? Well, they're going to phone the ACRD because they don't know who to phone. And then from there, they get referred to who they should. They come from a city where everything is just one call to City Hall. And they don't understand it's a lot of different calls here. So this is just telling people exactly that. They'll phone here and we'll say, you can't phone us, you have to phone the appropriate people, which would be the roads are here, sewers here, and the garbage where you want it to be. So it's we're more of a referral agency than anything else. That's what this motion says, is we're going to refer and not enforce. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Director Boyko and then Dr. Roth.
So I agree with what Director Sparrow just said, and I would like to change the wording on it, and I'm going to explain why, to make things very clear. If you read the briefing notes on page 78 at the top, purpose, that the Banfield area service. So this wording got changed into the motion, and it makes things confusing because this is more straightforward. That Banfield Area Service Committee recommended that the ACRD board direct staff to continue the practice of referring concerns on direct discharge or failing septic systems to the appropriate bylaw, appropriate provincial authority for compliance. If that wording was in the motion, we'd have a lot less talking here. So I would say we amend the motion to say that last part of the sentence, direct staff to continue the practice of referring concerns, blah, blah, blah. Done. And we can move on with this.
Okay, that's an amending motion. Do we have a seconder? All right, thank you, Director Beckett. And any further comments? Okay, seeing no further comments, all those in favor of the amending motion? It's just what's in the briefing note. Okay. Okay, all opposed? Okay, motion carried. And then now the main motion, all those in favor? All opposed? A motion carried. Thank you. Okay, that brings us to item F. Temporary use permit fee exemption for agritourism. Mike, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So we've had a good discussion around agritourism. I think everybody understands the background. we just wanted to bring this recommendation forward, just as the board has the option to amend or reduce development application fees. For specific types of applications, or for temporary use applications. Currently, the ACRD zoning bylaw does not permit agritourism uses that are allowed under the ALC regulations. And the board had considered bylaw amendments in January. So this is and we just directed to not go on that. So bringing this forward as an option, something that can be done in the interim. So the board, could reduce fees specific to the specific agritourism uses permitted in the ALC, and a quick summary of those is the properties would have to be in the agricultural land reserve. The property would have to have farm status, and the application would have to comply with the agritourism uses that are specifically permitted in the agricultural land regulations and act. So if directed by the board, staff would prepare a report and fees bylaw amendment and confirm the proposed changes would comply with the Local Government Act. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Okay, thank you. Director Cote.
Thank you. I would agree with moving forward with this. I think that we do need to help our agricultural families out there that are trying to produce good environment and healthy produce, etc., for us. And I think that this is a big step in the right direction. I've seen a report that says how little the average farmer makes per year annually, and it's not very much for all the work that it takes to put in. Anything that we can do to help. I do support this, but I also want to include that I want a conversation around short-term vacation rentals. I think that this is just the tip of the iceberg as far as where we should be looking. I don't want to dilute this conversation, but I would like to also bring forward at a future meeting the prospect of lowering the cost at $1,100 for a short-term vacation rental temporary use permit. That's a lot of money. When we were looking at providing this opportunity for residents to have a mortgage helper or helping to meet the cost of living for residents. So there's a big difference between someone who is living on the property, it's a permanent residence, and you're trying to provide a accommodation for a mortgage helper, and someone who owns 5 houses that do it as a rental business. I see a big difference there. So I would suggest that in the future that we could have a conversation also. I support this. Absolutely, and I want to push this through now, but I want to have a conversation regarding the temporary use, short-term vacation rental permits for permanent residents. I think that the cost is too high, and I want to make sure that that's covered also. So, and I do agree with this. If this is the quickest way to do it, it's the first step. It's too bad that the zoning bylaw didn't go through because it was ready. But we'll have to look at that, and hopefully when we do get to the point where we can look at the zoning bylaw, we can pull forward a lot of the work that was done over the 4 years or better that we worked on the zoning bylaw. Thank you.
Thanks. So let's have that motion after this motion. Would you be willing to move the motion as it's written?
I would be willing to move the motion that the Board of Directors consider amendment to bylaw P1480 to exempt farm status properties in the agricultural land reserve that meet the current agricultural land commission guidelines from temporary use permit fees for agritourism accommodation, and direct staff to prepare a report with the legal financial implications for the April 23rd, 2025 board meeting.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Solda. Any further comments on this motion? Oh, Director Boyko, please go ahead.
No, thank you very much. I was going to second it as well. And this not only affects the Beaufort people, but there's several in Sprout Lake, in Cherry Creek, and in Beaver Creek as well. So this does affect a substantial portion of the people that are out there with farm status. Thank you. And I support it.
Director Coots.
Thank you, Chair. My apologies. I seem to be having some camera issues, so I will just speak. Just wanted to voice that we are incredibly happy to support this. This seems like a wonderful opportunity of learning and being able to potentially get the young ones out there. All it can take is one quick little weekend of spending some time out on a farm to open a young mind to seeing where they want to go. We've heard left, right, and center that the farming and just the farmers are having difficulties getting young ones in and wanting to carry on the next generation. So really, really happy to support this. Clecco, Chu.
Great. Thank you very much. Director Roberts and then Director Sparrow.
Yeah, thank you for that. And I concur with the comments from Director Cote and from Director Coots. Anything that we can do to support the agri-tourism business in the valley. I mean, we're looking basically at 4 agri-tourism farms, and anything that we can help that we can do to help diversify the issues that they're dealing with. The pressures are, you know, becoming enormous, especially when we consider shopping local and products coming from without outside of the boundaries of Vancouver Island and other areas in the province in Canada. So I totally support this and recognize that this is just a start. I hope everything goes really well for everybody that's involved. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Sparrow and then Director Mastrangelo.
Thank you. So if we get this bylaw through, hopefully it's not gonna affect our OCPs or anything, we get through. Then when we redo the bylaws, can we incur costs back then, or is this for perpetuity that there will always be a no fee for people doing agritourism?
I think that'll depend on how things are put together when we get to that point, but they should be considered when we get there. Mike, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just say the intent and certainly my hope is that when the zoning bylaw is updated, that these uses would just be permitted and there would be no need for a temporary use permit application. This would be, you know, a stopgap fix until the zoning bylaw, a new zoning bylaw is updated and adopted.
So when we make those changes, in the event that we do, it would just render this moot. But in the event that things change back or something, then we would still have this unless we rescinded it, right? So yeah, go ahead.
And the financial implication, if we reduce this down to 0, would stay there forever, or would that be changed in the bylaws if they come through for the new set?
That depends on whether or not we choose to do so, or if the province forces us to do it somehow. But as far as I know, once we make this decision, it stays until we change it, unless a higher power makes us change it, or a different bylaw changes it for us, but we would be involved in that decision. Unless it's too far in the future, it might be a different government. All right, Director Mastrangelo and then Director Cote.
That helps to answer a number of the questions that I was asking. One, when does it start? Is it effective immediately right now? Or do we have to wait for the report?
So you can draft it so that it has retroactive impact. So if we want it to be that, we can make it that way. So if our intention is that, then that's great, but we can just confirm that once we actually put together the final wording on the amendment. Oh, are you still there? Oh yeah, you just moved. Any further comments? Director Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. A question through the chair to staff, I guess. I read I wasn't at the last meeting, and I read that the ACRD directs staff to halt enforcement of action on illegal short-term rentals other than enforcing the existing complaint process. Was that directed because of these agritourism accommodations? I don't know the background on that. Thank you.
The discussion was around the provincial regulations and requirements to register short-term vacation rentals through a provincial registry. That's when the discussion happened in the meeting.
Follow up then. Thank you. So by giving the agritourism accommodation not charging, do they have to sign up with the province then that they're a short-term vacation rental?
Yes, my understanding is that everybody that is offering vacation rentals through an online platform has to register.
So do we know what the cost is for that? Because I'm just looking at trying to relax everything. I'm sure that is that not part of the agricultural, so they don't have to provide that. Okay.
Yeah, so that we can only control the stuff that we're in charge of. So if the province incurs some sort of cost for getting onto that list, then that's their business, not ours.
Okay, can we ask what that cost is?
Yeah, go ahead. If you want to, yeah, just use the podium one.
So the annual fee through the province through the new short-term registry is $450. If you pay it early enough, you get a 25% reduction or 50% this year, but I don't know if that is going to be an annual cost savings depending on when you register, if that was just while they rolled it out.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, okay. Director Boyko, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. One of the concerns last meeting was with the temporary use permit, and you can only renew them twice. So they came into effect in 2018. And if you were someone that followed the exact rules, and if you had did one in 2018, and if you had renewed it once, it would be expiring right now, and there's no mechanism for you to renew it if you hadn't rezoned, which many have not. So until the province changes that regulation in some way or form, then we opted not to enforce the current thing because there's no mechanism that exists for people that are doing everything correctly on time. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Any further comments on this motion? Okay, seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Alrighty, Dr. Cote, I can't remember the exact wording of what you wanted to put forward. And where would the appropriate body for discussion be? Is that EA or is that some other body?
I think that would be the EA directors, that we take a look at short-term vacation rental temporary use permit costs regarding permanent residents versus recreational rentals.
Mike, did you have a supplemental?
Yes, and if I can, I would as part of the development approval review process, work that's being done, that is going to be come up. I would just link the two together so that when the board reviews the work on that from McElhaney that comes forward, that the review of that should be coming in about a month. So they'll be lined together. I just want to bring that up.
Okay, so some of the wording will be updated to take into account the McElhaney report. Okay, is that okay? Would anyone like to second that? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Dr. Steer, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, once again, just for clarification, what is the motion that was put forward? I'm sorry, Director Cody, I'm not clear on what the motion was.
I'd like a review of the cost for the temporary use permit, because it was started out as a mortgage helper to assist people to be able to live in their locations so that they could afford that.
Right. Thank you.
Okay. Clarity sought, clarity found. Okay, all those in favor? All opposed? A motion carried. Thank you very much. Alrighty, let's take a 5-ish minute break. Well, we don't have a clock anymore. Before we get into planning. So we'll be back in 5 or so minutes. So what is that? 25 after, please. All right, thank you very much. Okay, I think that's time, everyone. Hopefully you'll be able to be back. Should be enough time to use the washroom, grab coffee. I finished off the coffee, people here, I'm sorry. Alrighty. Just on cup number 5, it's fine. So we're not going to do item 9.1A, so we're going to go straight to item B. So this is planning. So First Nations and municipal folks don't have to participate and they don't vote, but you count for quorum, so don't leave. But we have item B. Item B here is a development variance permit. Mike, please go ahead.
Yes, and my apologies for the mix-up on the first application that we had to. We'll bring it back correctly for the next board meeting. This is DV 25002 for a property at 18440 Pacific Rim Highway. The applicant is applying for a variance for a proposed 2-lot subdivision. The variance involves a couple of things. For the first is a reduction in lot width. So for lot 1, a reduction from 30 meters to approximately 28 meters, 28.5. And for lot 2, from 30 meters to 21.8 meters, as well as a variance for a setback from a minor water course from 30 meters to 15 meters. This is the first step in the variance application. I would note that the Advisory Planning Commission reviewed this application and supported moving forward to the notification stage. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any comments or questions? Director Cote?
Thank you. I would move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors consider issuing development variance permit DVD 25002 subject to neighbor notification as per Local Government Act 499.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roberts. Any further comments or questions? Director Sparrow?
I have one question regarding staff. It says here on the bottom, return to Crown. There's some land, I assume, by the water. What does that really mean? When you go back to the.
So the natural boundary on this, what is a very old plan, is not the natural boundary anymore, and that's just part of the survey process. And the Land Title Act, requires the portion that is actually part of the lake to be returned to the Crown. So it's something that's done, and just correcting, what is probably an old mapping error.
I have so many questions and none of them are relevant, but it's interesting to me. Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm interested. So I have more beach than if I tried to do a development permit.
And yeah, what if it's natural erosion or okay. Anyway, yeah, I will not ask those questions for now. Okay, any further comments on the motion? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Okay, motion carried. Okay, that brings us to item C, which is a rezoning. So this is hearing and readings for Sport Lake. So just want to give an overview, Mike. Go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So this is a rezoning application for property on Syringa Road. So a public hearing for bylaws P 1515 and 1516 was held in person at the ACOD office and electronically on Zoom on March 11th. No members of the public were in attendance. Included with the public hearing minutes are the referral agency comments received and one letter of support that was received during the public notification period. The applicants have applied to rezone the subject property from Forest Rural A3 to Small Holdings A1 district to facilitate a proposed 3-lot subdivision. It is recommended that the board proceed with second and third readings of the bylaws. And again, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Director Cote.
Thank you. I did note that this is a bit of a change for this neighborhood. But it's good that more building lots are being opened up. So I would move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors receive the public hearing report.
You do have a seconder. Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Okay, motion carried. Please continue.
I would move that the Alberni Clayoquot Regional District Board of Directors receive the public hearing minutes.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? Motion carried.
I would move that bylaw P1515 Sprout Lake Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw be read a second time.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried.
I would move that bylaw P1515 Sprout Lake Official Community Plan Amendment Bylaw be read a third time.
Do you have a seconder? Thank you, Director Roberts. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? The motion carried. Thank you.
I would move that bylaw P1516 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be read a second time.
Thank you. Seconded by Director Roberts. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried.
And I would move that bylaw P1516 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be read a third time.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. All righty. That brings us to item D, which is the final one for planning, which is a rezoning. Mike, please go ahead.
Yes, thank you. So this is a rezoning application on Beaver Creek Road. So the property owners have applied to rezone this parcel from small holdings A1 district to acreage residential RA3 district to facilitate a proposed 2-lot subdivision. The Board of Directors first considered the application at the February 12th meeting and resolved to consider first reading of the bylaw at a future date, and that notice be given in accordance with Section 467 of the Local Government Act. So the notice was mailed out to all residents and property owners within 100 meters, and the ads were placed in the newspaper as required. The notice and information was also posted on the ACRD website, and the notice was also placed on the property. As this rezoning is consistent with the residential use policies in the Beaver Creek Official Community Plan, a public hearing was not held. The neighbor notification and public advertising provided the opportunity for public input. To date, no correspondence has been received. It is recommended that the board proceed with 3 readings of the bylaw. And again, happy to answer any questions.
My only question is the addresses those will be the addresses of once it's been put through? Is that how that works?
I think it shows as 2 because there is or was 2 dwellings in the property. Often if there's a mobile home on the property as a second dwelling, it's addressed separate.
All right, thank you for the clarification. All right, Director Roth, do you want to take this? Please go ahead.
Sure. I move that bylaw P1519 Regional District of Alberni Clayoquot Zoning Atlas Amendment Bylaw be read a first time.
Thank you. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? All opposed? A motion carried. Please continue.
A second time?
Great. Do we have a seconder? Thank you, Dr. Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? Motion carried.
And a third time.
Great. And seconded by, thank you, Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none. All those in favor? A motion carried. Thanks. Wow, when you really embed things in the OCP, it really goes nice, like quickly. Yeah. That's probably what's making the whole process worthwhile. So that's good to see. That brings us to the end of planning and into reports. We have 10.1, which is staff reports. Would anyone like to pull anything out, including staff? Dr. Cote, please go ahead.
Thank you. Page 135 to 190, the official community plan for Sprout Lake area and background research. Thank you to staff for the work that they've done so far, going along quite nicely. Thank you.
I don't really want to contemplate the amount of work that went into that many pages of desktop research. So thank you for that. Okay. Are there any other comments or questions? Could we have a motion to receive the staff reports, please? Thank you, Director Roberts, seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? And motion carried. All right, that brings us to item 10.2, committee reports, of which there are none. Member reports. We'll go into that. Item A is 911 Corporation. Director Beckett.
There's no report. We have a meeting on Friday, sir.
Great, thank you. Item B is Regional Library. Director Boyko.
Thank you, Chair. Last Friday, I sat in on the Audit and Finance Committee as a non-voting member. I requested to be on this committee and I was permitted to come there as a non-voting member. So I thank you very much to the library people for that. I had a very lively discussion on a forward plan for the finances, so that was good to see. I need to clarify one thing. Previously, I said the people, taxpayers, were out millions of dollars, but rather what happened is the reserves were underfunded and the budget was overspent. So moving forward, additional funds from taxpayers are required and put in the budgets to fully fund the reserves. In the past couple of years, that's been going up and in the future as well. So thank you very much for all your help.
All right, thank you for the clarification. That brings us to Chamber of Commerce. Director Minions or Director Boyko? Oh, Director Minions is coming on. Please go ahead.
Hi, thank you. No specific report, just I know that the big issue has been funding and working on the budget. So I know they are watching the conversations that we're having as they plan for just changes in their service levels if needed. Thanks.
Thank you. Any supplemental, Director Boyko?
Oh, not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. I did have something on that. Director Minions or whomever, if you can forward appreciation to Jolene for some of the interviews that she did. The ones that I saw were very good in pertaining to the Highway 4A Cameron Bluffs fire and then the impact report that came out. So that was just really well done. You can see value coming out of that conversation already. That brings us to item D, Air Quality Council for Port Alberni. Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. There's no report this time. They're going through some transitional stuff, so it might be a while before I get something back. Thank you.
That's fair. That brings us to AVICC, Dr. Cote.
Thank you. Just want to remark on the legislative reform forum that we had. It was very well attended. There is a report that's come out since and a survey. So if anybody hasn't read the report, it's very legal. Not the easiest reading, but it's very informative. And there's a survey that's out there as well. If people could please fill in that survey and provide that information. Just a reminder about the convention that's coming up and very much looking forward to that. I'd just like to a question to staff. So I'm not appointed to AVICC by this board. So I'm wondering why it's in these reports. It could be a report, but I just want to make that difference, which means that I'm not on any committees anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
At our last committee of the whole meeting, we did, I wanted to talk about the member report section of our procedures bylaw. It's been very inconsistent which appointees and which committee reports are listed. So we haven't made any changes, but I'd like to see some changes made within the new procedures bylaw because it is a little wonky.
Thank you for taking it on though, Dr. Cote.
I just want people to realize that I'm not appointed by this board to sit on this. That's all. Thanks.
All right, thank you. That brings us to Sawakin Public Advisory Group, Dr. Sparrow.
Thank you. We're going to have a meeting in about 2 weeks, so further updates after that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And that brings us to item G. It is not necessarily a member report, but we didn't know quite where to put it. I'd like to ask if Director Beckett could give us just a verbal overview of his experiences in the Ukraine. Please go ahead.
Thank you for that invitation, Mr. Chair. So our team just returned from our fourth deployment to Ukraine since the start of the war, and almost $1 million has been donated by Vancouver Island residents over the last 3 years, providing food and meals for over 85,000 internally displaced Ukrainians, medical equipment and supplies, fire rescue equipment, 3 school buses, educational supplies, including laptops, STEAM equipment, and all of the necessary equipment to establish the 3rd breast milk bank in Ukraine, the first in Western Ukraine. And we've established formal relationships with 5 municipalities, 2 hospitals. And I have to acknowledge the support that I've received from a number of colleagues around the board table, and I thank you personally for that. And I'd also like to thank the Hawaiian Nation, who on this last trip donated a ceremonial drum that had the most amazing indigenous painting of a baby breastfeeding on her mom. And that was presented to the Ivano Frankovic Children's Regional Hospital on the opening of the breast milk bank. And that will be proudly hung in their ward. And again, thanks very kindly, Chair Jack. I will be doing a follow-up with your nation showing the presentation. So that's the work. I'm grateful for all the support that I've received. Thank you.
Thank you for that update. I know that that's not an official organization that we report to, but apparently so is the ABICC. So we'll fix that in the procedures bylaw moving forward. But I felt it was relevant that we received that update. Important work is being done by this board, even if it's not the official duties of this board and our board members. So I'm really happy to hear that, Director Beckett. I'm wondering if we could have a motion to receive the member reports. Thank you, Director Roberts, and seconded by Director Sparrow. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? All opposed? The motion carried. Thank you very much. Alrighty, that brings us to item 11, our first notice of motion. That's exciting. Dr. Boyko, do you just want to take this? At least it's my first notice of motion. Please go ahead.
Well, it's my first as well. And basically what we did earlier today by passing the other thing, this is mute and not required. So we can remove it from the agenda. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Alrighty, so that brings us to late business, of which there should be none. And question period. Do we have any emails or items in the Q&A chat for the webinar?
We have no questions received and there's nobody in the audience. Thank you.
Alrighty, thank you very much. That brings us now to going in camera. So I'll read out the reasons why we'll be going in camera and then I'll move it. Motion to close the meeting to the public as per the community charter under sections 91A, which is personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position as an officer, employee, or agent of the regional district or another position appointed by the regional district. Number 2 is 91I, the receipt of advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including the communications necessary for that purpose. And 3, 91K, negotiations and related discussions respecting the proposed provision of a regional district service that are at their preliminary stages and that, in the view of the board, could reasonably be expected to harm the interests of the regional district if they were held in public. So I will move that. Are there any other? No, I guess there's no more items. So could we have a seconder, please? Thank you, Director Solda. Any further comments? Seeing none, all those in favor?